The Israelites were quite numerous, and all of the Israelites were exiled. They found Assyrian inscriptions that say 27,000 people were taken away from the city of Samaria. And so you get the impression in some academic accounts that only about 27,000 people were taken away altogether, but it's not the case. The inscriptions themselves is a problem of how they are interpreted, but they could be saying that 27,000 were taken away for the purposes of the army, whereas the rest were taken away in addition to that. And not only that, this inscription that speaks of 27,000 people being taken away from Samaria is talking about Samaria alone, after a long battle, after a campaign of several years, and after all the rest of the Israelite entity had been conquered and exiled, or was in the process of having that done to them. And all Israelite settlements that archaeologists have found, dating from that era, have been destroyed in that period. Nothing but ashes. And there's quite a while before any settlements whatsoever have been found, have been traced, even though the Bible indicates that new people did come in, that the ancestors of the Sumerians came in, the Samaritans came in and were resettled in that region. But we find that the archaeological findings give evidence of them somewhat later. But we can take the Bible as being true in this, as being a preferable, as having a preferable account. We can, that's a general we can always do, but even from an academic point of view, from the point of view of archaeology, we can do that. So as we said, most of the Israelites were taken overland. We have descriptions, we have Assyrian pictures of some of the Israelites' kingdoms, settlements being conquered, such as Lachish. Lachish is especially important, but we have others, and have the people being taken away, and they were taken away to the northern areas in Assyria, the Assyrian Empire, and there they linked up with other peoples. The Assyrians speak of this, and we have books on this. See our website for a list of the books that we have and the description of the books which describe them, or give some more information on this matter. And the Israelites were resettled in different areas of Assyria, and there they became associated with other peoples. And these other peoples were known to history and to archaeology as the Gomerians and the Scythians, also known as Gomer or Gimiru or Gomer, both in Assyrian inscriptions and in the Bible. And the Gomer, on the whole, Gomer was the son of Japheth. You had Noah. First of all, you had the first man, Adam and Eve, gave rise to the human race. Humanity came from them. After that, the situation was different. The climate was different. People were different. The Almighty decided to destroy them, but he saved Noah and his family. And from Noah and his family come all peoples of the earth. And the three sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from Japheth, one of the sons of Japheth was known as Gomer. And Gomer had three sons, Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Gomer. They are the sons of Gomer. And the sons of Gomer gave rise to the Scythians and the Scyths and other peoples. And the Israelites in their place of exile became associated with them, intermixed with them, or overlapped with them, or were settled in the same regions as they are to be found in. And we've done studies on this, shown it. And the book of Hosea, the first chapter of the book of Hosea, suggests that such a combination took place. Hosea was a prophet. Hosea was told to take a wayward woman, a bad woman, a woman of loose morals, and to marry her and have children from her, and he did so. And then we are told that these children, the 3 children who were born from him, are 3 different sections of the lost 10 tribes. And that is how the story of Gomer and Hosea may be understood. Hosea, that is what the book itself says. Hosea is told that these 3 children of Israel represent the Israelites when they go into exile. It suggests that they would go into exile through linking up through an entity known as Gomer. And these became the Sumerians, the Scythians, and other peoples who went to Western Europe. And this analysis of ours is confirmed, was preceded by others. And not only did archaeologists and researchers of about 100 years ago suggest this, but it's also confirmed by the Base Israel, the Rabbi of Gur, in from 1950 to 1974, approximately in that period. And he also wrote about it in his commentary on the Bible. And I met him when I first came to Israel. I didn't know that that was what he wrote, and it only became clear to me much later. But he writes about it. In other words, he confirms this association that we make, that has been made. So the Sumerians went to war against Assyria. They also were serving in the Assyrian armies as allies of Assyria. They split up into different sections. So one group of the Cimmerians, or sometimes they're pronounced the Sumerians or Cimmerians, so one group of them at an early stage moved into Turkey, and from there they moved into Western Europe, and they helped establish Celtic civilization, helped give rise to it, areas of France, of Belgium, of Britain, also Spain. All that region was populated or civilized by Celtic peoples related to Gomer, and the Israelites were amongst them. We also had the Scythians. The Scythians at first were identified as part of the Cimmerians. Later they split aside. They allied themselves with Assyria at one stage, but they eventually went to war against Assyria. Micah in the book of 5, the prophet Micah speaks of this. For a brief period, they established themselves as rulers over the Assyrian Empire, but then they lost it again, and eventually they too were pushed to the north, and from the north they moved westward. And we have other peoples, other Israelites also were among in this northern movement. At that time, the climate was a bit different. They had the area of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. That area of interior area of eastern Russia, east of Russia, was had quite a developed civilization. But the climate changes were taking place. It was drying up, and also other peoples, barbarian peoples and peoples from the east were coming in and pushing them out. So they moved, and they moved in stages and waves of migration, and they eventually all moved to Western Europe, stage after stage. And we also trace these major movements, and we show how they moved into different areas in the West. And these movements include people moving into Germany, and after Germany they moved out. From Germany they crossed over, they went to the north, they went into Scandinavia, and they went to the British Isles. And wave after wave, sometimes they fought with each other, or they pushed each other out, pushed each other forward, and we may discern amongst them Israelite elements. We find Israelites settled in these regions, and the presence of Israelites in these regions is confirmed by biblical prophecies concerning the lost 10 tribes. You know, the lost 10 tribes were supposed to be to the west and the north of the land of Israel, as we find, and that they would become a great and mighty people in those areas. That they would be in the isles of the sea, and they would be to the north and the west of the land of Israel. And numerous other points of identification the Bible mentions several times over, emphasizes. So this is what we have there. We also had offshoots from them. One offshoot from them that remained behind for a while became the Khazars. The Khazars were related to the Picts who settled in northern Scotland. The Khazars remained to the north of the Black Sea area, and eventually they intermixed with Jews who came in as refugees from outside. And together they created the Khazar nation, and they converted to Judaism. And a portion of the present-day Jews may pertain to them. Another portion of them had already separated from the main body and moved to the north and moved into Scandinavia and there to Scotland. Became known as the Picts, or a portion of the Picts. Either way, that is where we find them. Another section of these exiles moved into Germany, but whereas in other areas, in the Netherlands and Scandinavia and Britain and so on, the descendants of lost 10 tribes appear to have been the majority, in some cases overwhelming majority, or at least in the ascendancy. In Germany, it was just the opposite. They were a substantial minority. Somehow they managed to keep separate from the mainstream of German society. And then in the 1700s, 1800s, most of them moved to North America. The Great Migrations, and massive migrations of people splitting themselves up and leaving. The Germans themselves were astounded by it. They would see two different villages that centuries had been sitting alongside each other. One day, all the people from one village get up and move out with others as if pushed by an inner drive and go to America. But the others stay behind. And this can be explained by mainly by social movements, social sentiments, because the economic situation was not that bad. It was not so much money, or that was also a factor in a lot of cases, but it wasn't always the case. It wasn't that major drive was not necessarily the need to better one's life. It was to better one's neighbors, to move out, to be free of one's neighbors, to be independent, to go back to the main body of the Israelite nation. So that is also a point worth knowing, and we have studied it. We have found sources confirming this.